And then I will describe why we decided to do such a study on economic impact and how we did it and what we finally got back from this study. So the network of more than 800 public libraries covers the territory of Latvia, and public libraries provide equal access to everyone and access to information and knowledge, and no one is left behind, since one should spend no more than 20 minutes to reach the closest library. And there is one public library per 2,500 inhabitants in Latvia, and I believe it's more or less the same as you have here in Lithuania. Latvians are quite active public library users. We have 40% of users or 40% of inhabitants who've been to public library during the last year and used public library services. And the national statistics show an increasing number of internet users in country in general, and we have 73% of those who use internet, that meaning that only 27% doesn't use internet at all. And we believe that public libraries have contributed to this figure, because since the 3TD project has started and all public libraries were the same equipped with more computers and internet connectivity was improved, and all librarians were trained the same as you here, the number of inhabitants using free internet access at public libraries has increased almost 3 times. And the majority of those who regularly use library internet live in rural areas and have relatively low incomes. And quite the same as here in Lithuania, every 5th public library internet user has no alternative internet access. And during the period since 2007, not only the number of library internet users, but also the frequency of library internet use has increased. And there are twice as more users in 2011 who come to library for internet every or almost every day as in 2007. And it is highly important for the majority of users that the service remains free of charge, and we have 80% of users who say that they used internet at public library because it's free of charge, and comparing to 63% in 2007. And our social impact survey findings show that use of internet has grown both at home and at public libraries, but has dropped in other places like workplaces or educational institutions. And we believe that this shift in patterns of use has probably been influenced by economic and unemployment crisis in recent years that we experienced in Latvia too. And library internet users report on benefits in many areas. By providing free internet access in libraries, help users to enrich their free time, to communicate with family and friends abroad, or to support health by providing necessary information. And during the economic crisis, increasing number of people value the chance to save their time and their money by using e-banking services in public libraries. And growing number of people report that use of free internet access, training, and librarians' assistance have helped them to find a job or to improve an existing one. While the greatest improvements were seen immediately after the delivery of equipment and trainings that took place between 2007 and 2009, the picture continues to stay positive, and there is no doubt the opportunities offered by the free internet access in public libraries have made many communities in Latvia a better place to live by improving access to labor market, possibility to save resources, or providing access to e-services like e-banking and others. So it is evident that the social impact of public libraries both in Latvia and in Lithuania is growing, especially during the time of change when we experienced major economic, political and demographical challenges. And the number of public library visits in Latvia has grown from about 7.9 million visits in 2008 to almost 10 million visits in 2010. And this increase may be partly explained by the effects of economic recession and high unemployment rates in the country, and partly, of course, by development of new services in libraries like the free access to internet. But despite of the increasing use of library services, the annual budget has been falling, as seen on the slide. Libraries remain largely dependent on the public financing, and so they are in competition with other institutions or with other activities for public funds. And to have stronger arguments for advocacy, it was important for us to understand the economic impact generated by public libraries in Latvia. So now I will tell how we did the study. The economic impact of public libraries is a combination of direct benefits produced by public libraries and indirect benefits to the local or the national economy that are generated by the existence of libraries and their services. Direct benefits are those directly related to the use of library services that can be measured, such as the number of borrowed books or the number of events organized by the libraries or others. And each of services has been measured within a study by assigning a value via the representative survey of inhabitants and using the contingent valuation method that I will explain later. Indirect benefits are benefits to society or economy at large that occur from the existence and activities of libraries, but they are not directly captured by the use of library services. And these are very difficult to measure, and particularly assigning them a monetary value. And also the indirect benefits can be divided into indirect monetary benefits and indirect non-monetary benefits, like qualitative benefits that are measured within our social impact studies. And both types of indirect benefits are covered by our study. Part of the data for cost-benefit calculations comes from the national statistics and other part from the specially conducted surveys. And this study is unique in the sense that it covers all public libraries in Latvia, rather than individual libraries that have been considered in various studies conducted in other countries, like, for instance, in the United States, and also UK has a similar study. The study is based on a substantial data set. The survey sample included more than 3,000 individuals in the representative survey of inhabitants. In general, when we do representative survey of inhabitants, we survey only 1,000 inhabitants. This was done to get representative findings at the regional level, because of usage of libraries also is different in different regions of Latvia. And altogether, more than 600 library managers and more than 1,200 librarians took part in the survey. And additionally, we surveyed almost all municipality leaders, and the data collected allows us estimations over the 3-year period. And this study, this makes the study first of its kind, and nothing like this has been done in Latvia before. Now I will explain this method, the contingent valuation method that was used to get in our study. So in order to estimate the benefits, this method was used with the aim to identify a monetary estimate. And 2 ways of approaching this valuation was used. One is the willingness to pay, that represents what person would be willing to pay to ensure that he or she continues to enjoy the good or service rather than go without. And willingness to accept, that represents how much person has to be compensated to live well-being the same without the service as it was with. And it should be noted that the data used for calculating benefits of services represent the most conservative approach in order to avoid overstating the benefits. And I will explain what I mean when I'm saying most conservative approach. In the survey, some respondents indicated the value of some services to be 0. And this value was included in the data. calculations, taking into account all answers given by a respondent. An alternative approach would be to take only answers where people attributed at least a minimum value to service, and the value assigned to services based on the willingness to pay approach may depend on the ability of users to pay for services. Thus, in some cases, for instance, where users have low or very low incomes, willingness to accept might be considered as more representative or true value of the service. And answering the willingness to accept question, some people may place very high values on the compensation needed for the removal of services. And in general, one would expect willingness to pay to be less than willingness to accept. And the scope of the survey and analysis involved not only data on the library system as a whole, or library services in general, but also data on specific services that were selected for the study, and each of them were valued separately. So and now we are at the point when I will tell you what we got back. And I also did a conversion to litas and to dollars, since we have different people in the audience. So the net annual benefit of public library system in Latvia is more than 6 million lats on the basis of these conservative assumptions about the willingness to pay approach that I explained earlier. And the annual value of public libraries is about 23 million lats, which included an estimated option value of around 4 million lats that the registered user would be willing to pay for the availability of services, and around 20 million lats that library users are willing to pay for specific services. So that the total costs of public libraries are on average about 17 million lats per year. So finally, the annual cost-benefit ratio of the library system calculated using these variables are 1.37. And that means that each invested lat generates net benefit of new 37 centimes. And when I first presented this data to our Latvian librarians, so they were quite surprised, because they really expected this figure to be higher, because when we did have this study in our national conferences, librarians were citing or using data from the studies in states, and this number in states is higher. It's from 2.2 and can go up to 5.9, and it's much more higher than we got here. Nevertheless, in addition, as I mentioned before, we calculated also the under-reg benefits. And it was estimated that the Latvian public library system generates annual under-reg benefit to the economy of nearly 10 million lats. And taking this into account, the annual cost-benefit ratio is estimated at 1.96, meaning that each lat generates additional new lat. So, and as I mentioned before, there are substantial differences in cost-benefit calculations depending on the approach taken into calculations. And here you can see cost-benefit ratios for the three approaches: willingness to pay with and without zeros, and willingness to accept. And the differences are apparent, especially both of the alternative approaches show much greater benefits generated by public libraries than the conservative approach taken as a central case in our study. So under the other alternative assumptions, the net benefits of the library system are increased to almost 50 million and to almost 155 million, representing cost-benefit ratios of 3.88 and 9.96. And it also, in a full report, we did a comparison between findings of the studies done in states, and our researchers has found that few of the studies in states use not this very conservative approach, but somewhere in the middle, like willingness to pay without zeros. So now a little bit about each of the service. So the cost-benefit ratio show that 4 out of 12 services analyzed generate positive net benefit, and that was another surprise for our librarians. But we think that it's not this bad. Among the most significant findings from the study regarding specific services, a high net benefit of services like the free access to internet, use of reading room, lending and exhibitions, and these services are the most highly valued by library users and can be considered to constitute the core of what public libraries offer today. And we think that this shows a very positive trend, indicating that the basic services public libraries provide yield monetary benefits that exceed the costs of these services. And this also highlights the new role of libraries as a source of learning new ICT skills and also a focus on the social life in regions. The library services where the estimated monetary value of benefits did not cover costs included such services like services for visually disabled users that appear at the bottom of the list. And the impact of these services is of the same importance because we think that these enable disadvantaged library users to have access to new technologies and information. Also, the findings that are presented to you are averages for the 3-year period covered in our study from 2008 to 2010. The net benefits of public library services have been increasing over time, and this has been the result of higher number of visits and lower costs. And from the economic point of view, we can consider public libraries being more productive. And the findings in overall lead to a crucial conclusion, suggesting that public libraries not only contribute to the cultural development of society, plays an important role as a force for education, access to information, social communication, networking and social inclusion, but also serve as a solid economic ground for their existence as the benefits provided outweigh the costs. So, and one might ask what's next, or how we are going to use these kind of findings that we have now. And to answer this question, I will provide 2 short examples of how we already now use these findings in our high-level advocacy. And the first example is about the funding that's needed to cover internet connectivity costs in all public libraries. That funding comes from the government, and it is much more easier for us to advocate now for the subsidy when we can say that to sustain the service in all public libraries we only need less than 1 million lats, but in the result public libraries, by providing this access, can generate net benefit of around 2.5 million lats or more. And another example is about the funding that's needed by our libraries for promotion of reading in public libraries. And recently there was an intensive discussion around only 13,000 lats that are needed for the children's summer reading program. And it was very hard to find this funding either in the budget of the Ministry of Culture or in the Ministry of Education. But now we have additional arguments to support the story about all the social benefits that will occur if the right investments are made. So, and finally, I can say that our study clearly demonstrates that investments pay off. Thank you for your attention.